Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like if you enjoy it. Your support means a lot to us and helps the channel grow. Thank you so much. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Paradox of Freedom. Have you ever felt that despite the absence of visible barriers, something within you is holding you back? As if invisible chains are restraining your movements, limiting your choices, forcing you to act against your own desires. We live in a world where freedom is praised as the highest value, where everyone has the right to choose their path, express their opinion, and pursue their dreams. But why do we often feel unfree, confused, and unable to fully realize our potential? This internal discomfort, this sense of unfreedom, can manifest in various ways. It may be the fear of making decisions, dependence on others' opinions, the inability to say no, the desire to dissolve into the crowd just to avoid responsibility for our own lives. We may feel like puppets, being pulled by the strings of external circumstances, social expectations, or internal fears. Erich Fromm, a renowned psychoanalyst and sociologist, deeply explored this paradox of human freedom. In his book, Escape from Freedom, he raises an important question: why, after being freed from traditional forms of oppression, does man so often seek to relinquish his individuality and submit to new forms of authoritarianism, whether those be external forces or internal psychological mechanisms? Fromm suggested that, on the one hand, freedom is the greatest good and a condition for the development of human potential. It gives us the opportunity to be ourselves, to create, to love, and to build our lives according to our own values. But on the other hand, freedom carries with it the burden of responsibility, uncertainty, and isolation. To be truly free means to stand alone in the face of the world, without ready-made answers or clear directions. And it is this weight of freedom that can be so frightening that a person unconsciously seeks to avoid it by relinquishing their individuality and submitting to various forms of dependence. Imagine a bird that has been kept in a golden cage for its whole life. It has become accustomed to the safety and comfort of its confinement, to the fact that it is cared for and fed. But now the cage is opened, and the bird finds itself free. Instead of joyfully spreading its wings and flying into the sky, it may feel fear of the vast space, of the need to find food on its own and protect itself from dangers. It may even prefer to stay in its familiar cage, even if it is golden, because it limits its freedom. Something similar happens to us. We may long for freedom, but when faced with its responsibility and uncertainty, we may unconsciously seek ways to return to the cage, submitting to authority, dissolving into the crowd, or finding a savior who will take on the burden of making decisions. Today, we will delve into the profound ideas of Erich Fromm to understand the psychological mechanisms that make us run away from our own freedom, and most importantly, how to achieve positive freedom, the mature ability to be ourselves, to love, to create, and to live in accordance with our true essence. Chapter 2. Anatomy of Escape. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. This famous phrase by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, although not belonging to Erich Fromm, perfectly illustrates the dilemma explored in his work. Fromm believed that, after being freed from rigid social structures and traditions, man in the modern age faced a new problem: how to deal with his own freedom. Instead of accepting it as a gift and an opportunity for self-realization, many unconsciously choose paths of escape from freedom, trying to rid themselves of its burden through various psychological mechanisms. Fromm identified three primary tendencies that underpin this escape: authoritarianism, destructiveness, and conformism. Though these mechanisms appear different, they share a common goal: to avoid the feelings of isolation, helplessness, and anxiety that inevitably accompany the awareness of one's individuality and freedom of choice. Authoritarianism manifests in two forms: the desire to submit to a powerful authority and dissolve in it, relinquishing one's will and responsibility, or, conversely, the desire to become such an authority oneself, to control and suppress others. In both cases, The person seeks a sense of safety and belonging through hierarchical relationships, rejecting equality and mutual respect. By submitting, one removes the burden of making decisions. By dominating, one gains the illusion of control over an uncertain world. Destructiveness is another form of escape from freedom, which manifests in the desire to destroy what is perceived as a source of anxiety and helplessness. This can be directed either at the external world, aggression, violence, vandalism, or at oneself, self-destructive behavior, cynicism, devaluation of life. Often, the root of destructiveness lies in an unconscious sense of despair and powerlessness in the face of one's freedom and the complexity of the world. By destroying, the individual momentarily experiences the illusion of strength and control, albeit at the cost of personal well-being and the well-being of others. Conformism is perhaps the most widespread form of escape from freedom in modern society. It consists of the abandonment of one's individuality and dissolving into the collective we, the desire to be like everyone else, in order to avoid the feelings of loneliness and rejection. Conformism manifests in following fashion trends, accepting dominant opinions and behavioral standards without critical reflection. A person who chooses the path of conformism gains a sense of belonging and safety, but at the cost of losing their authenticity and ability to think and act independently. The modern person, freed from the shackles of the pre-individualistic society, which gave them a sense of security, has not gained freedom in the positive sense, the realization of their individual I, but, on the contrary, fled from this freedom, seeking a new security through submission and conformism. Erich Fromm wrote, "These mechanisms of escape from freedom, although they may temporarily reduce feelings of anxiety and isolation, ultimately lead to the loss of one's identity, an inability to engage in genuine love and creativity, neuroses, and a sense of inner emptiness." Recognizing these tendencies within oneself and society is the first step toward overcoming the escape from freedom and achieving a mature and loving personality. Chapter 3. Authoritarianism, the chains of submission and power. The authoritarian personality admires power and at the same time submits to it. This succinct description by Erich Fromm reveals the dual nature of authoritarianism as a mechanism of escape from freedom. A person who chooses this path seeks to rid themselves of the burden of their individuality, either by unconditionally submitting to an external force or by identifying with this force and suppressing others. In both cases, there is a rejection of equality, critical thinking, and genuine interpersonal connection. The desire for submission arises from a sense of personal weakness, helplessness, and fear of uncertainty. A person experiencing these feelings seeks a strong authority, whether it is a leader, ideology, tradition, or even a partner in a relationship, to whom they can unconditionally trust and offload responsibility for their life. By submitting, they gain the illusion of safety and belonging, freeing themselves from the need to make decisions and take responsibility for them. "I am just following orders" often becomes a justification for abandoning one's own conscience and moral principles. On the other hand, the desire for dominance is the flip side of the same coin. A person who experiences inner emptiness and insecurity may attempt to compensate for these feelings by gaining power over others. By controlling and suppressing those around them, they temporarily feel their own significance and strength. An authoritarian leader needs subordinates just as much as a subordinate needs a leader. Their relationship is based on mutual dependence, not on mature interaction between equals. Fromm noted that an authoritarian personality often possesses certain characteristics: an irrational admiration for power, unquestioning acceptance of authorities, aggressiveness towards the weak and submission to the strong, rigidity of thought, intolerance of uncertainty, and a tendency toward prejudice. These traits serve as psychological defenses against the anxiety associated with the awareness of one's freedom and individuality. Authoritarian tendencies can manifest in many areas of our lives. In relationships with parents or partners, this may express itself in the desire to control every action of the other person or Conversely, in complete dependence on their decisions. At work, this may show up as blind obedience to superiors or a despotic management style. In politics, it leads to supporting totalitarian regimes and intolerance towards opposition. Love of power and power as love are psychological opposites, wrote Erich Fromm, emphasizing that genuine love is based on equality, respect, and care for the freedom of the other person, while authoritarian relationships aim for control and suppression. Recognizing one's own authoritarian tendencies, whether the inclination to submit or to dominate, is an important step on the path to achieving mature freedom. This requires an honest look at one's fears and needs, at those inner emptinesses we try to fill through control or dependence. Overcoming authoritarianism involves developing inner strength and confidence, the ability to think independently and take responsibility for one's life, as well as the ability to build relationships based on mutual respect and equality. Chapter 4. The Shadow of Destruction. Destructiveness is a hidden force that seeks not life, but death. With this vivid statement, Erich Fromm describes another powerful mechanism of escape from freedom: destructiveness. Unlike authoritarianism, which seeks control and order, even at the cost of suppression, destructiveness is directed towards the destruction and annihilation of what is perceived as a source of anxiety, helplessness, and a threat to one's individuality. When a person feels overwhelmed by the burden of freedom, isolated and powerless in the face of the world, a destructive impulse may arise in their psyche. By destroying an external object or even themselves, they momentarily gain the illusion of power and control. This is a desperate attempt to rid themselves of the unbearable feeling of their own insignificance through an act of negation and destruction. Destructiveness can manifest in many different forms. On the level of interpersonal relationships, it may take the form of verbal aggression, insults, humiliation, and the desire to cause pain to those close to them. In a broader social context, it can manifest as vandalism, violence, wars, and other forms of destructive behavior aimed at destroying social structures and values. Fromm also highlighted self-destructiveness, the direction of destructive impulses towards oneself. This may manifest as self-criticism, self-flagellation, neglect of one's own health, addictions, and even suicidal tendencies. The foundation of self-destructiveness often lies in an unconscious sense of guilt, self-hatred, and despair. A person who is incapable of creation is prone to destruction, Fromm argued, emphasizing the connection between unrealized creative potential and destructive tendencies. When a person cannot find constructive ways to express themselves and realize their abilities, suppressed energy can transform into destructive impulses. Creativity, on the other hand, is one of the most important ways to overcome destructiveness, as it allows energy to be directed toward creating something new and valuable. Destructiveness often masquerades under various noble pretexts: fighting for justice, defending one's interests, expressing anger. However, upon deeper analysis, these rationalizations hide a deeper need for destruction, driven by a sense of helplessness and fear of one's freedom. Recognizing one's own destructive tendencies, whether directed at oneself or others, is an important step on the path to achieving mature freedom. This requires an honest acknowledgement of one's negative feelings and impulses, as well as an understanding of their underlying causes. Overcoming destructiveness involves developing the ability to create, constructively express one's emotions, and cultivate empathy and respect for oneself and others. This is a long and difficult process, requiring self-reflection, self-control, and a commitment to personal growth. Chapter 5. Conformism, Dissolution in the Crowd. The modern person lives in the illusion that they know what they want, while in reality, they want what, as expected of them, they should want. This insightful thought by Erich Fromm aptly captures the essence of conformism as one of the most common ways of escaping the burden of freedom. In an effort to avoid the feeling of isolation and anxiety associated with the awareness of their individuality, a person often unconsciously abandons their true desires, opinions, and feelings. Dissolving into the collective we, and adopting the prevailing norms and behavioral standards. Conformism manifests in our desire to be like everyone else, to follow fashion trends, to share commonly accepted views, even if they contradict our own beliefs. We fear standing out. We fear being rejected. We fear facing misunderstanding. And for the sake of a sense of belonging and security, we are willing to sacrifice our authenticity, uniqueness, and our ability to think and act independently. The social mechanisms of conformism are incredibly strong. From early childhood, we are taught to follow rules, to obey authorities, not to stand out from the crowd. The media, advertising, public opinion, all constantly broadcast certain standards of behavior and thinking, shaping our desires and needs. We often do not even realize how much our own views are actually reflections of the stereotypes prevailing in society. Fromm emphasized that conformism is not just passive following the majority. It is an active denial of one's individuality, often accompanied by inner conflict and dissatisfaction. A person who has chosen the path of conformism may outwardly appear well-adjusted and successful, but inside, they often experience a sense of emptiness and loss of their self. He feels safe because he has lost himself. He has ceased to be himself, and thus all the risks associated with the existence of his true self have disappeared, Fromm wrote, describing the tragic irony of conformism. In the pursuit of security and acceptance, a person loses the most valuable thing, their individuality, their ability to experience true love and creativity. Conformism can manifest in various aspects of our lives, from choosing clothing and lifestyle to political beliefs and interpersonal relationships. We may agree with the majority opinion even if deep down we have doubts, just to avoid arguments and conflicts. We may choose a profession or lifestyle that is prestigious in society, but does not align with our true inclinations and interests. We may build relationships not based on mutual love and respect, but on striving to meet the social standards of a successful couple. Overcoming conformism is a difficult but necessary step on the path to achieving mature freedom. It requires developing critical thinking, the ability to make independent judgments, and the courage to express our own thoughts and feelings, even when they differ from the opinion of the majority. It is the process of searching for and affirming our unique identity, our true essence. Chapter 6. Positive Freedom. The Path to Maturity. Freedom, although it made man independent and rational, also made him isolated, thus anxious and powerless, Erich Fromm wrote, highlighting the ambivalence of freedom. However, he did not believe that escaping freedom was mankind's inevitable fate. The alternative to neurotic mechanisms of avoidance is the development of what Fromm called positive freedom, the mature ability of a person to engage in spontaneous activity, love, and creativity, grounded in integrity and independence. Positive freedom is not merely the absence of external constraints. It is an inner state of maturity that enables a person to actively and constructively interact with the world while maintaining their individuality and integrity. A person who has achieved positive freedom does not need to submit to authorities, destroy the surrounding world, or dissolve into the crowd to feel secure and accepted. Instead, they find these feelings within themselves, through their ability to form authentic connections with others and engage in productive activity. A key element of positive freedom is the ability to engage in spontaneous activity. This means acting based on one's true feelings, thoughts, and desires, rather than under the pressure of external circumstances or internal neurotic impulses. Spontaneous activity is an expression of our true self and brings joy and fulfillment. It encompasses creativity in the broadest sense of the word, the ability to create something new, whether it be a work of art, a problem-solving approach, or simply a way of interacting with the surrounding world. Another crucial aspect of positive freedom is the capacity for love. For Fromm, love is not a passive feeling but an active force within the person, aimed at understanding and accepting another person in their individuality. Mature love is characterized by care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. It involves overcoming egocentrism and the ability for true empathy and compassion. Love is a means of overcoming the feeling of isolation and achieving a deep connection with others, without losing one's own individuality. Finally, positive freedom involves the development of integrity and independence. A mature person has a strong sense of their self, the ability for independent thought and decision-making, and the willingness to take responsibility for their life. They do not need constant approval from others and are not afraid to be themselves, even if their views differ from the majority opinion. Love is an active interest in the life and growth of the one we love, Erich Fromm wrote, emphasizing the active nature of true love as an expression of positive freedom. The path to positive freedom is one of personal growth and self-development. It requires awareness of one's neurotic tendencies, overcoming fears and dependencies, and developing the capacity for spontaneity, love, and independent thinking. It is a long and sometimes difficult process, but it is the only path to true happiness and self-realization. Chapter 7. Love as an Art, Overcoming Disconnection. Love is the answer to the problem of human existence. This profound and concise definition of love by Erich Fromm captures its essence in human life. For Fromm, love was not merely an emotion or feeling, but an active force, an art that must be learned, and the only way to overcome the fundamental sense of isolation and disconnection inherent in human existence after gaining freedom. Fromm identified several forms of love, each with its own characteristics and significance for our mental well-being. Maternal love, unconditional care and acceptance of a child, giving them a sense of safety and self-confidence. Brotherly love, love between equals, based on a sense of community, solidarity, and respect for the individuality of the other. Erotic love, the desire for complete union with another person, overcoming loneliness through intimacy and closeness. Love of self, not selfishness, but healthy care for one's well-being and development, grounded in the acceptance of oneself with all one's strengths and weaknesses. And finally, love of God, the desire for the highest spiritual value, symbolizing unity and all-encompassing love. Despite the diversity of forms, mature love, according to Fromm, shares common principles that must be mastered, just like any other art. These principles include care, active concern for the well-being of the other person, and striving to meet their needs. Responsibility, the readiness to answer for one's actions toward the loved one and for their well-being. Respect, recognizing the uniqueness and individuality of the other person, their right to be themselves. And knowledge, the desire to understand the inner world of the loved one, their needs, feelings, and motives. If I truly love another person, I feel unity with them, but as they are, not as I want them to be, Fromm wrote, emphasizing the importance of accepting the other person in their entirety, without attempting to change or control them. Unlike neurotic forms of love, based on dependence, exploitation, or the desire to avoid loneliness, mature love is an expression of positive freedom. It entails mutual respect, equality, and the desire for both one's own development and that of the partner. It does not restrict freedom. Rather, it fosters growth and self-realization for both individuals. Reflect on your relationships with those close to you. How much are they based on the principles of mature love, care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge? Or do they contain elements of dependence, control, or exploitation? An honest analysis of your relationships can be an important step toward developing the ability to experience genuine love. The development of the art of love requires time, patience, and constant work on oneself. It involves overcoming one's own egocentrism, cultivating empathy, and the ability to sympathize, and being willing to compromise and consider the needs of the other person. But the efforts invested in mastering this art are richly rewarded by the deep sense of connection, closeness, and mutual enrichment that mature love brings into our lives. Chapter 8. The Freedom to Be Yourself. Our journey through the deep and insightful ideas of Erich Fromm on the escape from freedom and the path to a mature and loving personality has come to its conclusion. We have explored the paradox of human freedom, our desire for it, accompanied by the fear of its burden, and the psychological mechanisms we unconsciously use to avoid the responsibility and uncertainty associated with our individuality. We have examined authoritarianism, destructiveness, and conformity as the main forms of escape from freedom, observed their manifestations in our lives, and realized their destructive consequences for our mental well-being and our ability to form genuine human relationships. But, most importantly, we also explored an alternative path, the path to positive freedom, based on maturity, integrity, and the ability to love and create. We understood that true freedom is not the absence of limitations, but an inner state that allows us to live in accordance with our authentic self, interacting with the world in an active and constructive way. Erich Fromm convincingly showed us that love is not merely a passive feeling, but an active art requiring care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. It is mature love that is the key to overcoming the sense of isolation and achieving deep connections with others, without losing one's individuality in the process. The path to positive freedom is a conscious choice, requiring the courage to face our fears and neurotic tendencies. It is a continuous process of self-awareness and self-development, aimed at freeing ourselves from inner chains and cultivating the ability for spontaneity, creativity, and genuine love. Reflect on your own journey. What escape mechanisms from freedom do you notice in your life? In which situations are you inclined to submit to authority, exhibit destructiveness, or dissolve into the crowd? Becoming aware of these tendencies is the first and most important step toward liberation. Make a conscious choice in favor of your individuality. Develop your unique abilities and talents. Do not be afraid to express your own thoughts and feelings, even if they differ from the opinions of the majority. Learn to build relationships based on mutual respect, equality, and mature love. Remember, true freedom is not a gift, but the result of your conscious efforts. It is the ability to be yourself, to love, to create, and to live in accordance with your inner truth without needing constant approval or control from others. Become free to be yourself. Free yourself from the burden of neurotic dependencies and fears. Unveil your true potential as a mature and loving person, and you will not only achieve inner harmony and happiness, but also gain the ability to build a more humane and just world around you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support truly helps us grow. We appreciate it so much.